At my son Ethan's funeral, as his casket lowered, his widow Victoria whispered to her sister. She planned to sell our family farm, his life's passion, to fund her law degree, claiming it was what Robert wanted. My heart broke, but my resolve hardened. I just smiled, then handed Reverend Davis a sealed letter Ethan gave me months ago. This is my story of fighting for his legacy. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. The wind bit at my face, a cruel reminder of the biting cold that had settled in my soul. My son Ethan's casket, a dark, polished box, was being lowered into the damp earth, swallowed by the grave. Each rasp of the ropes, each muffled thud of soil, was a hammer blow to my chest, driving deeper the hollow ache of disbelief. He was only 38, so vibrant, so full of life, and now just gone. How could this be real? My beautiful boy, my only child. Ethan had loved Harmon Acres with a fierce passion, a love he inherited from his father, Arthur, and passed down to no one else. The farm was his world, his canvas. He had painstakingly converted it to organic practices over the last 5 years, pouring his heart and soul into every acre, every crop, every living thing. He spoke of the soil as if it were a living entity, a testament to his belief in sustainable life. To him, the farm wasn't just land, it was a legacy, a promise to the future. Standing beside me, cloaked in a designer black veil, was Victoria, Ethan's widow. She gripped her sister Sandra's arm, her posture stiff, almost defiant. As the casket finally settled into its final resting place, a hushed reverence fell over the small gathering. But then, Victoria leaned in, her voice a low, venomous whisper to Sandra, slicing through the solemn silence like a poisoned blade. "I'll sell the farm to pay for my law degree," she murmured, her words barely audible yet piercing my soul. "It's what Robert wanted." My breath hitched. Robert? Who was Robert? The name hung in the cold air, a shocking phantom. I stared at Victoria, my grief momentarily eclipsed by a chilling realization. Her eyes, visible beneath the thin veil, held no sorrow, no pain. Instead, there was a cold, calculating satisfaction, a glint of triumph. It was then I truly understood. Victoria had always disdained farm life, disdained Ethan's love for the land, saw it as an obstacle, not a calling. It was an open secret, but to hear her plan his farm's destruction over his fresh grave, to invoke a mysterious Robert, was an insult beyond measure. Victoria must have felt my gaze, because she straightened, subtly adjusting her veil, and then, louder this time, directed her words towards me, a performance for the other mourners. "It's what he would have wanted, Evelyn," she said, her voice now a practiced echo of false sorrow, replacing Robert with a convenient he. The lie was so blatant, so disrespectful to Ethan's memory. It felt like a physical blow, but she didn't know about the letter. 3 months ago, Ethan had come to my small cottage, his face serious. He'd pressed a thick, sealed envelope into my hand. "Just in case, Mom," he'd said, his voice unusually somber. "Keep this safe for me. Don't open it unless you absolutely have to." I tucked it away in my cedar chest, a knot of unease twisting in my stomach, praying I would never need to open it. Now, as Victoria's cruel words echoed, I felt the crisp paper through the fabric of my coat, a silent weight against my heart. It was notarized. Ethan, my thoughtful, foresightful son, had prepared for this. Victoria, sensing my unusual stillness, or perhaps just seeing the direction of my gaze, took a step towards me. "Sandra," she began, a desperate urgency in her tone. "This isn't the time or place." Her eyes darted nervously between me and the small gathering. I met her gaze, and a strange calm settled over me. The crushing weight of grief didn't disappear, but something else rose in its place. A fierce, unyielding resolve. "This is exactly the time," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. With deliberate slowness, I pulled the sealed envelope from my pocket. The paper was slightly crumpled from being held tight for weeks. I turned to Reverend Davis, who stood a few feet away, his expression solemn. "Reverend," I said, extending the letter to him. "I believe this needs to be read." Ethan prepared it. The Reverend, looking surprised but understanding the gravity in my voice, took the letter with a gentle nod. A hush fell, thicker than before. The subtle shift within me was profound. The raw, incapacitating grief, though still present, gave way to a hardened determination. Ethan's legacy, his life's work, would not be stolen. Not by Victoria. Not by anyone. My mind drifted back, blurring the edges of the somber funeral. 40 years ago, Arthur and I had started Harmon Acres from scratch. It wasn't handed to us. We built it with our bare hands, with sweat, grit, and unwavering hope. We tilled the soil, raised the barn, and nurtured the dream, turning a patch of barren land into a thriving farm. It was our life, our purpose, our everything. Ethan had grown up with his hands in that very soil, learning the rhythm of the seasons, the language of the land. He'd followed Arthur like a shadow, absorbing every lesson, every piece of wisdom. His connection to Harmon Acres was visceral, an extension of his own being. He'd taken my husband's foundational work and elevated it, introducing organic practices, a testament to his vision and respect for nature. Arthur had passed away 5 years ago, taken by the same sudden heart condition that claimed Ethan. A cruel twist of fate, a generational echo of loss. Ethan had stepped up, bearing the weight of the farm and our family with quiet strength. He was a good man, a dedicated son, a loving husband to a woman who, I now realized, never truly appreciated him. Later that night, long after the last mourner had left and the silence of the cottage felt almost suffocating, Victoria appeared on my porch. The doorbell chimed aggressively, shattering the peace. Her eyes were hard, no longer veiled by sorrow. "What was in that letter, Evelyn?" she demanded, pushing past me into the dimly lit living room without an invitation. "You know, this is ridiculous. You ambushed me at the funeral." I stood my ground. "You'll hear it at the lawyers' meeting, Victoria," I stated, my voice calm but firm. Ethan made arrangements for everything to be handled properly. Her composure cracked. "Properly?" she sneered, pacing the small rug. "Do you know how it feels to compete with dirt and crops for your husband's attention? To always be second to a patch of weeds and mud? He loved this farm more than he ever loved me." Her voice rose with each word, a torrent of bitter resentment, finally revealing the raw, ugly truth of her toxic relationship with my son. His organic mumbo-jumbo was a waste of time, a childish fantasy. "It's just land, Evelyn, and it's mine now. I already have an offer from Westland Development." Westland Development. The name echoed in the stillness, confirming my worst fears. She wasn't just thinking of selling. She had already been plotting, negotiating, even before Ethan was cold in the ground. The greed was palpable, a chilling wave that washed over me. After she stormed out, leaving the cottage cloaked in silence once more, I walked to the porch and sat on the old swing. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and the distant hum of unseen life. The stars above seemed indifferent to the human drama unfolding beneath them. I knew then that the battle for Harmon Acres, for Ethan's legacy, had just begun, and I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I would fight. 2 days after the funeral, the air in Mr. Sterling's law office felt thick with an unspoken tension, far heavier than the humid summer outside. I arrived early, my heart still heavy with grief but fortified by a quiet resolve. Ethan's lawyer, Mr. Sterling, was a man of quiet dignity and sharp intellect, someone Ethan had always trusted. The will reading was set for 10 o'clock. When I stepped into the conference room, I was met with an unexpected sight. It wasn't just the two lawyers, Mr. Sterling and Victoria's slick city attorney, Mr. Thorne, who occupied the large mahogany table. The room was surprisingly crowded. Seated along the walls, filling almost every available chair, were familiar faces from our community. There was Frank Miller, a lifelong friend of Ethan's, who ran the local hardware store. Dr. Evans, the town veterinarian who had tended to Harmon Acres' livestock for years. Clara, who managed the farmers' market where Ethan sold his organic produce, and several other farmers, neighbors, and even a couple of Ethan's former high school teachers. Their presence was a comforting, yet puzzling, sight. Victoria, looking impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, swept in moments later, her sister Sandra trailing behind her. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the unusual gathering. "What is the meaning of this, Mr. Sterling?" she demanded, her voice sharp with indignation. "Why are all these people here? This is a private family matter." Mr. Sterling, a calm presence at the head of the table, adjusted his spectacles. "Mrs. Harmon, these individuals are here at Ethan's specific request," he explained, his voice even and measured. "His will explicitly states that he wished its reading to be witnessed by the community he served, for whom he lived, and to whom he dedicates his legacy." Victoria's lawyer, Mr. Thorne, a man with a perpetually tight-lipped expression, immediately bristled. He stood, his voice cutting and authoritative. "Mr. Sterling, I must object to this highly irregular proceeding. A will reading is a confidential matter. My client wishes for this to be conducted in private, as is customary." Mr. Sterling simply raised a hand, a gesture of quiet authority. "Mr. Thorne, the proceedings are following Ethan's explicit, notarized instructions. He clearly outlined the terms for this reading. His wishes are paramount. We will proceed as directed." He then nodded towards Reverend Davis, who sat quietly beside him, holding the thick envelope I had given him at the funeral. Reverend Davis, his voice kind and resonant, cleared his throat and began to read Ethan's last will and testament. The room fell silent, everyone leaning forward, a collective breath held. He spoke of Ethan's love for Harmon Acres, his vision for the land, and then he read the specific dispositions. First, Victoria's inheritance was laid out. Ethan's personal savings, a substantial sum of $175,000 in various investments, all joint accounts they shared, and their comfortable home in town. It was a generous settlement, more than enough for anyone to start a new life. As the Reverend listed these assets, Victoria's expression remained impassive, almost expectant. Then came the part about Harmon Acres. The Reverend's voice deepened, imbued with a touch of Ethan's own passion. The farm, all 320 acres, including all equipment, livestock, and existing structures, was not bequeathed directly to Victoria. Instead, it was placed in a carefully constructed trust. The administrator of this trust, to my stunned surprise, was me, Evelyn. The purpose of this trust was clear and unwavering. Harmon Acres was to be permanently transformed into the Harmon Wildlife Sanctuary and Sustainable Agriculture Center. The will detailed a vision of ecological preservation, educational programs, and continued organic farming practices, all designed to benefit the community and the environment. It was Ethan's dream, laid out on paper for all to hear. And then, the kicker. Victoria was indeed entitled to a portion of the farm's future. She would receive 25% of any profits generated by the trust, but only if she actively honored its terms and supported its mission. If she contested the will, or attempted to undermine the trust in any way, her entire interest in Harmon Acres would be forfeited. The clause was designed to prevent exactly what she intended. The room, which had been silent, now buzzed with a quiet murmur of surprise and approval. Victoria, however, erupted. She sprang to her feet, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. "This is preposterous," she shrieked, her face flushed with fury. "He never discussed any of this with me. This is some sick joke." Her eyes, blazing with resentment, landed on me. "You, Evelyn, you put him up to this, didn't you? You always hated me, always resented that I took your precious son away from this cursed farm." Mr. Sterling calmly intervened. "Mrs. Harmon, Ethan made these decisions independently. His will was drafted over several months, with careful consideration. Furthermore, his mental competence was certified by Dr. Hayes just 2 weeks before his passing." Victoria scoffed, a harsh, dismissive sound. "A sustainable agriculture center? He wanted a petting zoo. That's what he wanted. He wasn't in his right mind, I tell you. Suddenly, Frank Miller stood up, his gaze firm on Victoria. Ethan talked about this for years. Victoria, he said, his voice quiet but strong. He had detailed plans, showed me sketches, even discussed potential grants. It wasn't a sudden whim. Dr. Evans nodded in agreement. He discussed the sanctuary at length with me, particularly the protection of local bird species and pollinators. His mind was sharp, his vision clear. Clara and several others chimed in, each confirming Ethan's long-standing dedication to this very dream, validating every word in his will. Victoria's face contorted with a mixture of rage and frustration. Her attempts to dismiss Ethan's vision as a delusion were crumbling before her eyes. "I'm contesting this," she declared, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. She grabbed Sandra's arm. "This is outrageous. My lawyer will be in touch, Mr. Sterling." She shot me one last venomous glare as she stalked towards the door. "Enjoy your fantasy, Evelyn. It won't last long." With that, she swept out of the room, leaving behind a silence that felt almost deafening. After Victoria's dramatic exit, the community members slowly turned to me, their faces reflecting a mixture of sympathy and resolve. Frank Miller was the first to speak. "Evelyn," he said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder, "Ethan's dream will not die. We're here for you. Whatever you need to make this sanctuary a reality, the community will stand with you." Others echoed his sentiments, offering their unwavering support. In that moment, surrounded by those who truly understood Ethan's heart, I knew I wasn't alone. The battle had been declared, and I had an army. In the days following the explosive will reading, a wave of warmth and solidarity washed over me, a balm to my aching heart. The town, true to its word, rallied around me with an intensity that both surprised and deeply touched me. My phone rang constantly with calls of encouragement, and my small cottage kitchen overflowed with casseroles, pies, and endless offers of help. Neighbors dropped by just to sit for a while, offering silent comfort or sharing fond memories of Ethan. It was a testament to the kind of man my son had been, and it reaffirmed my resolve to protect his legacy. Frank Miller and his wife Martha, lifelong friends and pillars of the community, were among my staunchest supporters. They visited me often, bringing not just food, but unwavering reassurances. "Don't you worry a bit, Evelyn," Martha said one afternoon, setting down a steaming dish of chicken and dumplings. "Victoria doesn't have a leg to stand on." "Everyone knows Ethan's dream was real," Frank nodded, his expression grim. "That fancy Chicago lawyer of hers might make noise, but the truth is on our side." Their words were a much-needed anchor in the stormy waters ahead. Clara, never one to sit idle, quickly put her organizational skills to work. She took charge of a fundraiser at the next farmers market, a bustling hub where Ethan's organic produce had always been a favorite. She designed Harmon Wildlife Sanctuary t-shirts and had them printed locally, selling them alongside her own homemade jams. The response was incredible. People lined up not just for the shirts, but to donate, to share stories of Ethan, and to express their commitment to his vision. Every dollar raised, Clara assured me, would go directly to the trust. Dr. Evans, the veterinarian, was also busy. He reached out to his network, contacting wildlife rehabilitation experts and environmental scientists from across the state. He collected powerful statements from them, all supporting the viability and importance of Ethan's vision for a sanctuary and sustainable agriculture center. These statements would be invaluable, demonstrating the ecological significance of the project and countering Victoria's claims of it being a petting zoo. The local newspaper, the County Chronicle, didn't lag behind either. Its front page featured a heartfelt article about Ethan's pioneering environmental work and his dedication to sustainable farming methods. It highlighted his impact on the community and his forward-thinking approach to agriculture. The story portrayed Ethan not just as a farmer, but as a visionary, painting a stark contrast to Victoria's dismissive portrayal of him. One particularly poignant moment came when David Owens, a younger farmer from a neighboring county, stopped by. His eyes were still a bit raw, but full of gratitude. "Ethan saved my farm, Evelyn," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. After the blight wiped out my crops 2 years ago, I was ready to give up. Ethan came over, spent days with me, showing me how to rebuild, how to enrich the soil naturally, how to start fresh with organic methods. He didn't just give me advice, he gave me hope. David promised to volunteer his time and knowledge, a living testament to Ethan's profound impact on others. But while the community's support was a source of strength, Victoria was not idle. She began her own campaign. Not in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion. Rumors started to circulate, insidious whispers designed to undermine my credibility. Evelyn always disliked Victoria, some people said. She's just using Ethan's death to get control of the farm she always wanted. Other gossip suggested I was manipulating Ethan, taking advantage of his sudden illness. It was a nasty, petty smear campaign. And while most people saw through it, the constant negativity was a drain. Then came the escalation on the legal front. Mr. Sterling received a formal request from Mr. Thorne for all of Ethan's medical records from the 6 months leading up to his death. When he informed me, my heart sank. I knew exactly what Victoria was trying to do. "This is a common tactic, Evelyn," Mr. Sterling explained, his face serious. "They're going to try and argue that Ethan wasn't of sound mind when he made his will. They'll claim he was unduly influenced, perhaps by pain medication or the stress of his illness, rendering him incapable of making such complex decisions." I protested immediately. "But that's absurd. Ethan was only on a very mild prescription for some aches he was getting. The doctors had just identified some early heart concerns. Nothing debilitating. He was completely lucid, clear-headed, right up until the very end." It was true. Ethan had been uncomfortable at times, but never confused, never out of touch with reality. He'd continued to manage the farm, read extensively, and discuss his plans with passion. The truth felt like a flimsy shield against the calculated attacks of Victoria and her expensive lawyer. The legal maneuvering was relentless. Every phone call from Mr. Sterling brought news of another motion, another document request, another obstacle. And with each one, the attorney fees mounted. Already, the small nest egg Ethan had left me was dwindling faster than I liked. Adding to the financial strain, Harmon Acres itself was struggling. Without Ethan's constant presence, his hands-on management, and his intuitive understanding of the land, the daily operations suffered. I did my best, but I was not a farmer. My expertise was in the home, in supporting Arthur and Ethan, not in running a 320-acre organic farm. The weight of it all, the legal battle, the financial drain, the struggle to keep the farm alive, combined with my raw grief, created an emotional strain that threatened to overwhelm me. But I looked at the community that rallied around me. I thought of Ethan's passionate vision, and I found the strength to carry on. 3 months had passed since Ethan's death, and the pain of his absence was still a dull ache, a constant companion. The legal battle with Victoria was draining, but the community's unwavering support kept me going. One cool autumn afternoon, I found myself in Ethan's old office, a space I hadn't truly entered since he'd been gone. The scent of old paper, rich earth, and Ethan's faint, familiar cologne hung in the air. I was trying to sort through his meticulously organized files, a task that felt both sacred and agonizing. Each document, each note, was a whisper of his mind, his dreams. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Dr. Hayes, our kind, elderly family doctor, a man who had seen Ethan through childhood scrapes and teenage fevers, and ultimately, through his last days. His face, usually a roadmap of gentle concern, now held a new look of quiet determination. "Evelyn," he said, stepping inside. "I'm retiring next week, and that means I can finally speak freely about Ethan, without violating patient confidentiality as strictly. I've been waiting for this." He sat down, his gaze steady. "Ethan visited me just 2 weeks before his accident," Dr. Hayes revealed, his voice low. "He was worried about heart palpitations, a recurring discomfort." My heart tightened at the memory, the mild prescription, the vague assurances. But then Dr. Hayes continued, revealing a layer of Ethan's concern I hadn't known. His primary concern wasn't even for himself, Evelyn. It was for Victoria. He was worried about her reaction if his condition worsened. He feared she would use any vulnerability to push her agenda. Dr. Hayes leaned forward, his voice heavy with the weight of that confession. Ethan told me Victoria was relentlessly pressuring him to sell the farm and move to Chicago. He said she saw the farm as an impediment, a dirty relic keeping her from a more sophisticated life. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. So, her plans to sell weren't just a recent development. They had been a constant source of strife in Ethan's last months. This explained so much of Ethan's quiet worry. Then, Dr. Hayes recounted words Ethan had spoken, words that echoed with a profound sense of foresight and love. "If anything happens to me, Doc," Ethan had said, his voice etched in Dr. Hayes' memory, "my mother is the only one who will honor what this land is meant to be. She understands. Victoria, she just doesn't see it." My eyes welled up. My son, even in his quiet suffering, had trusted me, had understood Victoria's true nature. Dr. Hayes then pulled a document from his bag. "I've prepared a sworn statement. Evelyn," he said, handing it to me. "It documents Ethan's mental clarity during our final consultations, his consistent vision for Harmon Acres, and the pressures he felt from Victoria regarding the farm's future. It should be instrumental in your case." The document was meticulously detailed, a powerful testament to Ethan's sound mind and unwavering purpose. As the legal battle intensified, unexpected supporters continued to emerge, adding their voices to the chorus for Ethan's legacy. Mrs. Albright, Ethan's high school science teacher, came forward with years of Ethan's essays and projects, all detailing his early passion for environmental conservation and sustainable agriculture. Neighboring farmers, many of whom had been initially skeptical of Ethan's organic methods, now offered their testimonies, praising his knowledge and foresight. Even the town council, usually slow to act, was beginning to lean in our favor, recognizing the positive impact Ethan's vision could have on the local economy and environment. The momentum culminated in a town hall meeting, organized by Clara and Frank, to publicly endorse Ethan's vision. Over 200 people packed the old community hall, a powerful display of collective will. The local TV news station even sent a reporter, recognizing the growing human interest story. Midway through the meeting, as various speakers passionately described Ethan's impact and the importance of his dream, Victoria walked in, accompanied by her sister Sandra. She slid into a back row seat, her face carefully impassive, a mask of indifference. Speaker after speaker stood up, sharing personal stories of Ethan's kindness, his intelligence, his tireless efforts for the community and the environment. They spoke of the wildlife sanctuary and sustainable center not as an abstract idea, but as a living, breathing promise to their future. Frank Miller, standing at the podium, his voice booming with emotion, turned his gaze directly to Victoria. "Deborah," he said, using her formal first name, a subtle but stinging rebuke to her pretense of being an outsider. "This is what your husband wanted to create. This is the legacy he left not just for his family, but for all of us. This land, this dream, is a part of who we are." I watched Victoria closely. Her mask of composure, usually so impenetrable, wavered. A flicker of something, perhaps defiance, perhaps a fleeting moment of self-doubt, crossed her features. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and her eyes, for the briefest instant, lost their coldness, replaced by a momentary flash of something akin to fear. Then, just as quickly, the mask settled back into place. Without a word, she rose and quietly slipped out of the hall, her sister trailing behind her. As the door clicked shut, a collective sigh seemed to ripple through the room. It was clear. Victoria, for the first time, truly understood. She wasn't just fighting a grieving mother. She was fighting an entire community, a community united by love for a man and his dream. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I walked out to the north pasture of Harmon Acres. The wind rustled through the tall grass, a gentle whisper. I stood there, looking out at the expanse of land Ethan had loved so deeply. "We're getting there, son," I whispered into the twilight, my voice thick with emotion and pride. "We're fighting for your dream, And we will win. If you think the story is intense now, you haven't seen anything yet. The truth about Victoria, Ethan's wife, is about to unravel in the most shocking way. Stick around, hit that like button, share this with your friends, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. The legal proceedings dragged on, relentless and exhausting. Summer bled into fall, and the relentless back and forth in court felt like a slow, deliberate torture. Victoria's lawyers, backed by seemingly endless funds, filed motion after motion, demanding endless depositions, delaying every step. Each legal maneuver chipped away at my strength, both emotionally and financially. Mr. Sterling, seeing the strain, gave me a somber warning. She's trying to wear you down, Evelyn. Financially. She believes if she bleeds your resources dry, you'll eventually give up. He was right. The attorney fees were mounting, eating into my savings at an alarming rate. One blustery afternoon, I was searching through Ethan's desk for some old farm insurance documents Mr. Sterling needed. I opened a seldom-used, deeper drawer, tucked behind a stack of seed catalogs, and my fingers brushed against something hard. It was a small, unmarked USB drive, almost hidden from view. A strange sense of foreboding settled over me, but my curiosity, spurred by the ongoing battle, pushed me to investigate. I plugged the USB into Ethan's old laptop, its screen flickering to life. A single folder appeared, simply labeled D Messages. My heart pounded as I clicked it open. Inside, I found hundreds of screenshots, all of text messages. As I scrolled through them, a cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. The messages were between Victoria and a man named Derek. The dates on the messages stretched back 8 months before Ethan's death. 8 months. They revealed a blatant, cruel affair between Victoria and this Derek. Every word I read was a fresh stab to my heart, but it got worse. Much worse. These weren't just personal messages of infidelity. They openly discussed the farm. Victoria was relentlessly pressuring Ethan to sell, revealing her motives with sickening clarity. One message from Victoria stood out, chilling me to the bone. The heart thing scared him. Once we have the money, we can start over somewhere new. No more dirt, no more cows, just us. My breath caught in my throat. She was talking about Ethan's heart condition, something he'd only recently learned about, using it as leverage. Another message, even more damning, sent a shiver of pure disgust down my spine. The heart condition makes this the perfect time to push. He feels guilty about potentially leaving me with a farm I can't manage. My son, worried about leaving his wife unsupported, and she was exploiting his vulnerability, his very decency. The betrayal was staggering, monstrous. My hands trembled as I carefully copied all the screenshots to the laptop. Then, without a moment's hesitation, I called Mr. Sterling. My voice was tight, barely a whisper. "Mr. Sterling, you need to come over. Now. I've found something." He must have heard the urgency, the raw emotion in my voice, because he was at my cottage within 20 minutes. I showed him the D Messages folder. He sat quietly, scrolling through them, his face growing grimmer with each screenshot. Finally, he looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and satisfaction. "Evelyn," he declared, his voice firm, "this changes everything. Absolutely everything." He immediately began photographing the screen, transferring the files, meticulously documenting every piece of evidence. "This proves her intent, her manipulation, her affair, her motive to discredit Ethan's will." He paused, looking at me with a serious expression. "I must warn you, Evelyn. Once these messages are submitted to the court, things will get very, very ugly. Victoria will be exposed. She won't take this lightly." Mr. Sterling's warning proved prophetic. The very next day, as I sat alone in my cottage, still reeling from the discovery, Victoria burst through my front door, uninvited, her face a mask of incandescent rage. "You had no right," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the quiet rooms. "Those were private messages. You absolute witch!" I stood my ground, my own anger, fueled by the depth of her betrayal, burning hot and steady. Private? I countered, my voice dangerously calm. Private? While you plotted against my son? Private while you schemed to steal his legacy? Tell me, Victoria, did Ethan know about your affair? Is that why he wrote that letter? Why he protected his farm from you? My words struck a nerve. Victoria faltered, her furious outburst suddenly dying down. Her face drained of color, and her eyes darted nervously. This life, she whispered, her voice cracking, the anger giving way to a raw, self-pitying confession. This life was suffocating me. Evelyn. The dirt, the endless work, always second to the land. I thought I could change him, make him see what I needed. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, but I saw no remorse, only self-preservation. Derek, she continued, her words tumbling out. He's an old college boyfriend. He's a real estate developer. He's the one who connected me with Westland Development. He understood me. He promised me a life away from all this. Then came the most devastating admission. Victoria's shoulders slumped. Ethan. He found the messages. About a week before the accident, we argued. A terrible fight. He was so angry, so hurt. He left to clear his head. He drove off, and that was it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Ethan's last moments. Not peaceful, not filled with love, but clouded by betrayal, by the crushing weight of his wife's infidelity and greed. The image of him, heartbroken and confused, driving away to clear his head before his fatal accident, was a searing pain in my heart, worse than any grief I had felt before. He had known everything. My voice was a raw whisper, barely audible, but filled with a cold finality. Get out, Victoria, I said, pointing to the door. Get out of my house. And never, ever, come back. As she stumbled out, her face a mixture of shock and dawning dread, I finally understood the full depth of Ethan's foresight. He hadn't just predicted Victoria's actions. He had known of her infidelity, her betrayal, her desire to destroy his life's work. He had deliberately protected his legacy, not just from a greedy widow, but from an unfaithful wife. My son, even in his final days, had fought to preserve what he loved most. And now, it was my turn to finish that fight. The morning after Victoria's explosive visit, my phone rang before the sun had fully climbed over the horizon. It was Mr. Sterling, his voice crisp and direct. Evelyn, Victoria's lawyer just called. They're requesting settlement terms. My heart, still heavy from the previous night's revelations, leaped with a surge of relief and vindication. The hidden messages, the undeniable proof of her betrayal and scheming, had worked. Victoria, knowing her position was now completely untenable, had finally conceded. The settlement was swift. Victoria accepted Ethan's original terms, exactly as laid out in his will. She received the house in town, Ethan's personal savings, and the modest percentage of future sanctuary profits, contingent on her not interfering. Stripped of any leverage, and with her reputation in tatters, she dropped all claims to Harmon Acres. Within days, she signed the trust documents, formally relinquishing her hold on the farm. The legal battle, which had felt like an endless, suffocating wait, was finally over. 2 weeks later, news spread through the town that Victoria had packed her bags and moved out, reportedly heading to California. She was last seen driving away in a rental car, her sister, Sandra, by her side, not looking back. We heard whispers that Derek, her old college boyfriend and the real estate developer, quickly lost interest once he realized Harmon Acres was protected from any development. His motivations had been purely financial, tied to the land's commercial potential. With that gone, his interest in Victoria dissolved, and their toxic relationship, built on greed and betrayal, crumbled. Justice, in its own quiet way, had been served. With the legal battle behind us, the entire community, which had so fiercely rallied in defense of Ethan's dream, now threw itself into building the sanctuary with unbridled enthusiasm. Frank Miller, a man of endless energy, brought in his heavy equipment, clearing overgrown brush and preparing sites for new structures. Clara, with her usual organizational prowess, orchestrated mass planting days, transforming neglected corners of the farm into vibrant native habitats. Dr. Evans, true to his word, connected us with specialists in wildlife rehabilitation and environmental education, bringing their expertise to the planning stages. 1 year to the day after Ethan's death, a crowd gathered at Harmon Acres for the groundbreaking ceremony of the Rehabilitation Center. It was a poignant moment, a testament to Ethan's enduring vision. As part of the ceremony, I placed a time capsule into the foundation of the new building. Inside, I carefully laid Ethan's last letter to me, a collection of photographs of him throughout his life on the farm, and dozens of notes of support and hope from community members. It was a symbolic gesture, embedding Ethan's spirit and the town's collective promise deep into the very heart of the sanctuary. The transformation over the next 10 months was nothing short of miraculous. Fields once dedicated to monoculture crops were converted into diverse natural habitats, teeming with life. An old barn was lovingly restored and repurposed as an education center, complete with interactive exhibits. Miles of walking trails were carved out, inviting visitors to explore and connect with nature. Every day, as I walked the land, I felt Ethan's presence, a quiet joy in seeing his vision meticulously brought to life. He would have been so proud. 2 years after that terrible day, the Harmon Wildlife Sanctuary and Sustainable Agriculture Center officially opened its gates to the public. Over 300 people attended the grand opening, a vibrant celebration of life and legacy. Local news channels, who had followed the dramatic legal battle, were there to cover the joyful event, showcasing the first rehabilitated animals. A majestic hawk, a family of rescued raccoons, and several injured songbirds, released back into the thriving habitats. Frank Miller stood beside me, watching the joyous crowd. "Ethan would have loved this, Evelyn," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "He would have been so proud of what you've done, what we've all done." I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes for the first time in years. "He'd be proud of this community, Frank," I replied. "And of himself, for having the foresight to protect his dream." The sanctuary flourished beyond our wildest expectations. School trips became a regular occurrence, with children learning about conservation and sustainable living. Farmers from surrounding counties visited, inspired by Ethan's organic methods, seeking advice on how to transition their own lands. Universities began conducting research projects on the diverse ecosystems we were cultivating, making Harmon Acres a beacon of ecological innovation. 3 years had passed since Ethan's death, and life, though irrevocably changed, had found a new, beautiful rhythm. I often sat on my porch, sipping tea, watching children explore the walking trails. One afternoon, a magnificent great blue heron, one of the sanctuary's first rehabilitated patients, gracefully lifted off from the nearby pond, its wings a silent testament to hope and healing. I reached for Ethan's last letter, the personal note he had enclosed with his will. I reread his familiar handwriting, the words a gentle caress to my soul. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone, but the land remains. It's meant for more than just profit. It's meant for life, for learning, for peace. I love you, and I trust you with my dream." A tear traced a path down my cheek, but it was a tear of gratitude, not sorrow. "We did it, son," I whispered into the quiet afternoon air, my voice filled with a profound sense of peace. "Your dream is alive. It's more alive than ever." The Harmon Wildlife Sanctuary and Sustainable Agriculture Center became more than just a place. It became a living testimony to Ethan's vision, a continuation of our family's story, and a powerful legacy of love, resilience, and community spirit. It was a reminder that even in the face of profound greed and betrayal, true purpose and unwavering dedication could build something beautiful and lasting.